everybody. Today we have a very special guest. It is my mother, Nan, and she is going to share her experience as a person who was actually diagnosed with dyslexia in the 1940s, which it was not very common back then. And so we'll just get started talking to her about her experiences. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
So thank you for doing this interview today. And as you've shared with me in the past, you were diagnosed as a kid. Would you share your story about that?
Well, the funny thing is I don't actually remember having reading problems. But I know that when I was in third grade public school, my parents took me out of public school and put me in
Episcopalian,
thank you. Got more dyslexia problems now than I remember as a child. They put me into an Episcopalian private school. And I remember my father had graduated from Yale, and I remember going to the Yale lab and having electrodes put on my head, throughout my head, to try to see what was going on, I guess, in my brain.
And how old were you?
I don't know. I know my parents started sending me to a psychologist in New Haven, where Yale is. I remember going to him. I don't know whether it was when I was in third grade or when I was in sixth grade, when the school wanted to hold me over. And my parents did not want me held over because it wasn't, everybody would think I was dumb, and they knew I wasn't. So they were recommended to go to Vassar Summer Institute when I was 11 years old in 1948. And we went to Vassar Summer Institute. My mother, my brother and I, and my father came on weekends. And one of the psychologists at Vassar had suggested that it would be good for me to go to the Poughkeepsie Day School, which was a very progressive elementary school, and the principal was associated with Vassar. And I would to board with 14 other children on a farm, which was delightful. It's when I began horseback riding, when I didn't want to go to school for 2 weeks. And the teachers who owned the boarding part did not make me go to school. And so for 2 weeks, I stayed at home at the country house that we slept in. And then I went back to school. And I don't remember any special training at that point. When I finished 8th grade, I was allowed to go back to the same private school in Waterbury, Connecticut. And I was tutored. And it was, I don't remember feeling bad about it. It was a homeroom of 112 or 114 students, chairs.
Wow.
And they were at different classes, but it was the homeroom. And in front of the homeroom was a little office where I was tutored. And that's the first tutoring I remember. And it's interesting that in a Jewish family, the boy is usually more important than the girl. And I was given this attention, but my brother, who I believe was also dyslexic, was not sent to an appropriate place. So I went back to the Episcopalian school and was tutored. And I remember I did very well in sociology. I took Spanish. I was excused from Latin because of my disability, where all the other students took Latin. And I was a C student, which to me was good enough. It was better than being a D student.
And was that good enough to your parents?
Was that what?
Was that good enough for your parents?
Yes, because I was able to apply to college. And I applied to several colleges. I applied to Sarah Lawrence, where I was put on the waiting list. And I applied to Wheelock, which was a teacher's college in Boston. And I was not motivated and not happy at Wheelock. Most of the students were more interested in playing bridge. And at that point, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I was not happy there. And I reapplied to Sarah Lawrence. And I got into Sarah Lawrence as a transfer student. And without realizing it, again, Sarah Lawrence was a perfect place for me because it was a progressive college. And you would have 3 courses, but each course you would have a private meeting with the professor and do a private project. So again, it was a more integrated school.
And Sarah Lawrence is on the list of recommended schools today for people with learning challenges. It is inclusive for everyone. However, I guess because of their structure, it is a more ideal program for people who learn differently.
Yeah, when I went there, it was just a women's college, but veterans were able to go for graduate studies. And I knew that although I wanted to be a teacher, I did want to major in teaching. I wanted a broader education. And I was very lucky that accidentally I applied to Sarah Lawrence because I did not realize what Sarah Lawrence was, or maybe my parents pushed that on me. I don't remember. But I graduated from Sarah Lawrence. And then I made another very good decision. And I wanted to go to graduate school. And I picked the one graduate school where I felt that I accidentally picked the right school that I was able to function in. And there were no grades. That was Bank Street College of Education in New York. And I didn't graduate from there. I didn't finish. I was teaching at that point. And sure you don't remember, but when I graduated from Bank Street, you and your father came to my graduation. I don't remember how old you were. I don't remember the year I graduated, but I've had a lot of accidents in my life that turned out to be really, I think I was intuitively in the right place.
Yeah, nothing's an accident in life. We just don't realize consciously what's going on.
I did not finish, as I said, and I went to a party and I met some students who had been at Bank Street, and they said that because a lot of students didn't finish, if you take 2 courses and write a thesis, you could go back to school and finish your degree. And that was what I did. And the master's thesis was about your life and our families.
Well, and I was going to say, I think I was about 3 in the pictures are up to about 3 or 4. So that was probably when you graduated.
Mm-hmm. So that would have probably been in 74. And I had been out of college for quite a while. And I was embarrassed going up to the tutoring in the front of the room. That did not make me feel good. But I just plowed ahead. I'm very fortunate for the parents that I had, because they knew there was something wrong with my learning ability, but they knew that I was not dumb. And they kept finding things to help me, a psychologist, a special school. And they did not make me feel that I was any lesser than my friends.
And so, I mean, I know you can't speak for your brother, but you said his experience was very different than yours. Did they make him feel the same?
He was sent to a boys' boarding school that they did not check out, and he was one of 2 Jewish boys. And the other one was a neighbor who we never liked. None of us liked to play with him. And my brother was very unhappy and felt awful about himself and would write me letters about he was going to run away if they made him go back again.
And did they make him go back again?
No, they didn't. He went to another private school, a boys' school, and he did not have an easy time.
And so you became a teacher, and
I got my master's as well as my bachelor's.
And when I started tutoring your grandchildren, my children, you didn't know that they were dyslexic. You didn't know I was dyslexic. How is that? How is that possible as someone who knew they were dyslexic, and a teacher, to not know? As a teacher, what did you think about the 20% of your students who were struggling?
I always worked extra with the children that were struggling. I had some children that were more advanced, and I had a class that was mainly Latin immigrants from Mexico, Peru, Cuba, etc. And I would spend more time. The way I arranged my classes, they were more hands-on classes. So I would do an art class with them where I would read a book that had the illustrations were or could be an art project. So I would connect them. I would sit and talk. I would have a meeting at the beginning of class every day, and we would talk about the weather and different things, and I would write on the board so that they could see what I was talking about. And I also spent extra attention on one little boy who was way advanced, and I had recommended him for a special first grade when he goes on, because some of the others would fall to the less
Fall through the cracks?
Yeah.
So I guess, well, number one, your students were younger, they were kindergartners, and number two, you taught them using your dyslexic out of the box thinking so that they were all able to be successful in their learning environment.
I would say everything. I had a monolingual class, which means I was supposed to teach in English. But at the time, I was fluent in Spanish, or more fluent than I am at this time. And I would say everything in English. I would repeat it in Spanish and then say it in English. And pretty much most of the children by January had a good grasp of English.
And I know you've said the little kids who were not Hispanic also would learn Spanish.
I had a little boy from India or Pakistan, and he had picked up some Spanish from my way of teaching. So he was trilingual in kindergarten.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's the best time for kids to auditorily and verbally learn another language, because our minds are the most susceptible from birth to age 12 to learn a second language or a third language.
And I think the reason why I didn't pick up a real problem with you was because although you had a lot of problems tying your shoes for quite a long while, I think you might have been in second grade by the time before you could really tie your shoes easily.
You know, I did not remember that, but that is a very common trait for people with dyslexia, to struggle with the fine motor skills to tie their shoelaces. These days, little kids have Velcro shoes, so parents can't necessarily see that as an indicator. But go on.
I don't think I recognized your learning disability until you went to Little Red, because I thought you were so bright. And I knew you were very bright, and I didn't really connect that the learning disability as having inherited it from me.
Well, now I was held back before going to...
You were held back, and then you skipped 4th grade and went into 5th grade. And although you did fairly well, you needed tutoring. And I found that it was better to have an outside tutor than to tutor you myself. I tried, and we had conflicts, and I didn't want that to destroy our relationship. So I hired outside tutors when you were in 5th grade.
Well, I now realize as an adult, the behavior problems I had the second time around in 3rd grade was because of my embarrassment of being in a small private school and not moving up with my classmates. So, because my behavior improved, not the next year, but midway through the next year, my behavior improved.
Well, the reason why you were hyperactive, but the problem you had in 5th grade was as much as the teacher's inability to know how to function with you. And he left after Christmas vacation and became a realtor. And the new teacher you had as a student teacher before, and he adored you.
Yes.
So from then on, you didn't have problems. In any complaints, and I was told that if you wanted, first I was told that you had to be taken out of Little Red, and I refused. I said, I will not do that till the end of the year. I'm not going to disrupt your life in the middle of the year. And then the teacher who came liked you, but because Little Red had wanted you to leave, I found another school for you that unfortunately was not emotionally the best school. But by the time that you were finished with 5th grade, you could have gone back to Little Red, but I had already paid for the other school.
It was actually 6th grade.
Yeah.
So 7th and 8th, I was at the other school.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, it's a matter of you don't know what you don't know, and you didn't know what the signs of dyslexia were. You just knew that you had that as a label.
Mhm.
which didn't help you to identify it in other people.
And I knew I was struggling in certain classes in high school. And I probably knew I was struggling in elementary school. But for some reason, it didn't affect me. My dyslexia is affecting me more now as an adult.
Well, as an aging adult.
And aging adult.
And that's because you're not using your brain as much as you did when you were in younger and working. And so when you don't lose something, when you don't use something, you lose it.
Yeah, my spatial, I was throwing away some, I was walking my dog and I wanted to throw away his mess. And I didn't look up and I banged into a garbage pail. And I'm finding things like that are happening more. And I think my concentration is not as good. My focus.
Well, again, when you're not using something, you lose it. So, I mean, that's why doing brain activities can help keep things sharper for you as you start to age. That's why I bought you crossword puzzles, and Grandpa used to do crossword puzzles as a aging person, and that probably kept him sharper.
It's interesting. I went back to my 50th anniversary of Sarah Lawrence, and we all talked a little about ourselves. And I mentioned my learning disability, my dyslexia, and everybody in my class was shocked to hear, because none of them were aware, and none of them saw me as somebody that needed extra help. Although I did take a leave of absence after my third year of college, and went back after a couple of years, and I finished. But I did have to take a leave of absence.
Why was it? Just your brain got tired and you needed time to recoup from learning before you could go back to learning, perhaps?
It could be, because I know I was having psychological problems then, and I was seeing somebody at the college. And then we had advisors at Sarah Lawrence besides the individual work with our teachers. And my advisor did not want them to, wanted them to leave open my return to college. And he was very adamant about it. And then I did return to college.
Before we close out, do you have any advice to individuals, parents, grandparents, teachers on what you've learned over the years about being a dyslexic, a mother of, a grandmother of, and a teacher?
I think I would be more aware now of problems, and I would have taken you particular out of St. Anne's at an earlier time and would not have had you held over.
Yeah, I think holding students back is the worst thing. I mean, I made that mistake with one of my children too. And when a child has dyslexia, holding them back does not give them more time to catch up, because time is not what they need. They need to be taught differently. And it does really hurt the self-esteem and make for a harder experience.
So it's an additional problem. It gives an additional problem. And I think that what you have done with your children through the dyslexia program that you use has helped them tremendously.
Let's
And
talk about that for a minute. So when I first wanted to start homeschooling, what was your feeling about that?
I didn't believe in it, and I didn't think you should. And now, as a result of where your children are as adults, I think that you handled it very, very well. And I think your program helped them. And they're doing, especially your youngest child, is up on level. And he's doing beautifully between your teaching him the way you did and his interest in computers and doing reading on computers, which I did not believe in either. Matter of fact, the year that I retired from teaching, the following year was the computers came into the school. And I really would not have wanted to do that with my children who had problems with the English language. And then to start with a computer, instead of working with their hands and experiential learning, I don't think the computers would have been good for them. But I think your teaching and the computers helped your youngest son tremendously. And I now would recommend to any parent, homeschooling is the way to go.
And it didn't take you long to change your mind either. I think it was only about a year.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was around a lot and I saw, the activities they were doing with homeschooling and the way you were teaching them. And I felt that it would be successful. I would recommend both homeschooling and your program to all children who needed a little special help.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being the one who purchased the program for me to help my children.
Well, I'm glad to be able to help you and work with you and help satisfy any urge you have.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, you changed the trajectory of hundreds of kids' lives.
Well, I'm happy I could do that, especially for my own grandchildren.
Yes, which was, I mean, initially that was the only intention.
Mm-hmm. And you've developed a program that has helped many children far and wide.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this interview with me today.
I'm happy to be able to. I wish I could have given more information, but I was pretty innocent to my problems.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's unfortunate that lots of children today, as young as kindergarten, are experiencing angst and embarrassment because of the way our educational system is set up, that they feel shame and they start feeling bad about themselves as human beings as young as 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So, it's good that you were sheltered from that and weren't scarred that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.